silver locket was small. It was old. It was badly scratched. It looked like a piece of junk. If you saw it on the street, you would not even stop to pick it up. But to Salvatore, that cheap piece of metal changed everything. It did not just break his heart. It completely shattered his entire world. Salvatore was a billionaire. He owned massive tall buildings. He owned private jets. He owned beautiful houses all across the world. He had more money than he could ever spend. But money cannot buy the truth. And money certainly cannot bring back the dead. For 20 long years, Salvatore believed a terrible lie. He went to sleep every single night with a heavy heart. He carried a deep, burning anger inside his soul. He hated the one person he should have loved the most. He thought he knew exactly what happened on that cold, rainy night 2 decades ago. He was completely wrong. The truth was not hidden in a heavily guarded bank vault. It was not locked away in a top-secret safe. It was hanging right around the neck of his quiet, elderly maid, Connie. She was a woman he barely noticed. She was a woman who cleaned his floors every single day. When that locket accidentally clicked open, Salvatore's heart stopped. His hands began to shake violently. In that one split second, 20 years of bitter hatred turned into pure, suffocating guilt. He realized he had ruined lives. He realized he had punished the wrong people. What did Salvatore see inside that faded silver locket? Who was this quiet maid? And what dark secret was she carrying in her heart for all these years? The truth is a story of deep love, terrible betrayal, and a massive mistake that can never be fixed. Stay with us until the very end. This story will make you question everything you think you know about the people around you. Before we dive into the incredible story of Salvatore and the secret locket, please take a quick moment to subscribe to our channel. Your wonderful support helps us bring you more heartwarming and emotional stories every single week. Also, we would absolutely love to know where you are joining us from today. Please leave a comment down below and tell us your city or your country. We read every single comment. Now let's begin our story. Salvatore lived in a house that looked like a modern castle. It sat high up on a beautiful hill. It looked down on a busy, bustling city. The house was made of expensive glass and cold gray stone. It had 30 large rooms, but it was incredibly quiet. There was no laughter in the hallways. There was no warmth. It felt more like an expensive museum than a home. Salvatore was 65 years old. He had sharp gray eyes and silver hair. His face was frozen in a permanent, stern expression. He rarely smiled. He almost never laughed. People who worked for him were terrified of him. They knew Salvatore had zero tolerance for mistakes. If a worker dropped a glass, they were fired immediately. Salvatore was not born into wealth. He grew up very poor. He knew what it felt like to have an empty stomach. He worked 18 hours a day for many years to build his massive business empire. Because he fought so hard, he trusted absolutely no one. He believed that everyone wanted something from him. He believed love was a weakness. The servants moved through the house like ghosts. They tried their best to be completely invisible to their harsh master. But there was one worker who was completely different. Her name was Connie. Connie was 62 years old. She was a small, fragile-looking woman with completely white hair. Her face was covered in deep, soft wrinkles that told a story of a very long and very hard life. Connie had been working at the mansion for exactly 5 years. She was the most reliable maid in the entire house. She never missed a single day of work and never complained about the heavy workload. Salvatore rarely looked at her. To him, Connie was just another piece of furniture. But if he had actually bothered to look closely, he would have noticed the deep sadness in her gentle brown eyes. It was a sadness that time could not heal. He also would have noticed the locket. Connie always wore a cheap, faded silver locket around her neck. It hung from a thin, worn-out chain hidden inside her uniform shirt. Every few minutes, Connie would reach up with her hand and press her fingers against it. She did it to draw strength from it. Connie lived completely alone in the poorest part of town and never shared her secrets. One cold, stormy evening, Salvatore was sitting alone in his massive library. A fire was crackling in the fireplace. This specific date was always the hardest night of the year for him. It was the anniversary of the night his life was completely destroyed. 20 years ago, Salvatore was a happy man. He had a beautiful, kind wife named Eleanor and a wonderful 5-year-old son named Dominic. Dominic had bright blue eyes and a laugh that could light up the darkest room. Salvatore loved his little family more than life itself. Then came that terrible night. Salvatore had to travel to another city for a major business meeting. While he was away, a massive fire broke out at their home in the middle of the night. By the time Salvatore rushed back through the heavy rain, his beautiful home was nothing but black ash and smoking wood. The police officers gave him the devastating news. His wife, Eleanor, and his little son, Dominic, did not make it out of the house. The fire investigators told Salvatore that the fire was caused by a faulty old space heater. But a few days later, the pain turned into hatred. The police found a letter in Eleanor's car parked down the street. It was a goodbye note addressed to Salvatore. In the letter, Eleanor wrote that she was deeply unhappy and could not live with him anymore. She said she was taking Dominic and leaving forever. The police believed Eleanor had packed her bags to run away with another man. Salvatore felt completely betrayed. The woman he loved had planned to steal his precious son away from him. The grief of losing them was terrible, but the burning anger of their betrayal was even worse. Salvatore locked his heart in a dark, cold box. He vowed never to trust a single human being again. For 20 long years, he carried that dark hatred in his chest. The next morning, Salvatore was in a terrible mood. He had not slept a single wink all night. His mind was flooded with painful memories. He walked into his grand study to review some financial documents, and he called for a cleaner. A few minutes later, Connie walked into the room carrying a soft cloth and a bottle of polishing spray. She began to dust the long bookshelves. She reached up high to clean the top shelves, standing on her tiptoes. It was a difficult reach for an older woman. Suddenly, Connie's foot slipped on the polished hardwood floor. She lost her balance completely and fell hard against a tall, heavy display cabinet. A very expensive, antique crystal vase wobbled on the top shelf and came crashing down to the floor. The sound of shattering glass filled the quiet room. Hundreds of sharp pieces scattered everywhere. Connie gasped, her face turning completely white with fear. She dropped to her knees on the floor, her hands shaking badly. "I am so sorry, Mr. Pendleton," Connie cried out, her voice trembling. "My foot slipped. It was a complete accident." Salvatore slammed his hands down on his desk and stood up. His eyes were burning with intense anger. "Do you have any idea what you have just done?" Salvatore shouted, "That vase is irreplaceable. Get out of my sight. You are done here. Pack your things and leave immediately." Connie looked up at him, her eyes filled with absolute heartbreak. She did not argue. She bowed her head low and began to pick up the broken shards of glass with her bare hands. She wanted to clean up her mess before she left. "Leave it," Salvatore barked. "The other staff will clean it up. Just get out." Connie jumped in fear. In her rush to stand up, her foot caught on the edge of a small rug. She tripped and fell forward onto the hard floor again. As she fell, the thin, worn-out silver chain around her neck snapped. The small silver locket slid across the shiny wood and stopped right at the toe of Salvatore's leather shoe. Connie let out a sharp, terrified scream of pure panic. She scrambled forward on the floor like a desperate animal, reaching out her hand to grab the locket. "Please," she sobbed. "Please give it to me. Anything else, but please not that." Salvatore looked down at the locket, and then at Connie's extreme reaction. He found it very strange. Why was this poor woman so utterly terrified of losing a cheap piece of junk? Then he noticed something else. The old latch had broken open from the fall. The locket was lying wide open. Salvatore bent down slowly and picked it up before Connie could reach it. He brought the small locket closer to his eyes and looked inside. There were 2 tiny, faded photographs. On the left side, there was a picture of a beautiful, smiling young woman with long dark hair. Salvatore's heart skipped a beat. It was Eleanor, his late wife. His breath caught in his throat. How did this old maid have a photo of his dead wife? He quickly turned his eyes to the right side of the locket. The second photograph showed a sweet little boy about 5 years old, holding a small toy car. It was Dominic, his precious son. Salvatore's world began to spin rapidly. The blood rushed out of his face. He stared at his dead wife and his dead son. He looked down at Connie. She was still on the floor, covering her face with her hands and sobbing quietly. "Where did you get this?" Salvatore asked, his voice shaking violently. "Who are you? Why do you have a picture of my wife and my son?" Connie slowly lifted her head. Her eyes were filled with an ancient, deep sorrow. She took a deep, shaky breath. "They were my family too, Salvatore," she said quietly. Salvatore gasped. No servant ever dared to call him by his first name. "What are you talking about? My wife had no living family. Who are you?" Connie stood up slowly from the floor and looked directly into Salvatore's gray eyes. "Eleanor did not have a sister," Connie said softly, "but she had a mother she thought was dead, a mother who was forced to abandon her when she was just a tiny baby." Salvatore's mind went completely blank. He stared at Connie's wrinkled face. Suddenly, a memory flashed in his mind. He remembered looking at old, black and white childhood photos of Eleanor as a baby. She was being held by a beautiful young woman who looked exactly like a younger version of Connie. "You are Eleanor's mother?" Salvatore whispered, stepping back. "But Eleanor told me her parents died when she was a toddler. She grew up in an orphanage." "That is what she was told to protect her," Connie said weakly. She sat down in a nearby chair, looking completely exhausted. Connie began to tell her story, a story buried in the dark for 40 years. When Connie was a young woman, she was married to a dangerous, cruel criminal with a violent temper. To protect baby Eleanor, Connie tried to run away, but her husband caught her, took the baby away, and beat Connie badly. He threatened to kill the child if Connie ever tried to come back. He hid the baby in a secret orphanage under a completely fake name and forced Connie to flee the country. Connie spent decades living in hiding, working menial jobs and praying for her daughter every single day. "Many years later, my husband died in a prison fight," Connie said, tears falling down her face. "The danger was finally gone. I spent all my savings on private investigators. It took me years, but I finally found her. But by the time I found her, she was already grown up. She was married to you, and she had a beautiful little boy named Dominic. She was so incredibly happy." Connie looked out the large window. "I wanted to run to her. I wanted to tell her that I was her mother, but she believed her parents were saints who died in a tragic accident. If I showed up, I would bring a dark, ugly past of crime and shame into her perfect life. I decided it was better to remain a ghost. I just watched her from a distance. I saw how much you loved her." Salvatore felt a massive lump forming in his throat. "But what about the fire?" he asked, trembling. "What about the letter? The police found a letter in her car. She was planning to run away from me." Connie slowly shook her head. "No, Salvatore. Eleanor never wanted to leave you. That letter was not written to you. It was written to me." Salvatore felt his knees going weak. He gripped the edge of his desk tightly. "To you?" "Yes," Connie nodded. "A few weeks before the fire, Eleanor accidentally spotted me near your old house and recognized my face. We met in secret, and I told her the entire truth. She forgave me, but she was very overwhelmed. She wanted to process everything before she told you, because she did not want to upset you while you were working so hard on your big business deal." Connie wiped a tear from her cheek. The night of the fire, Eleanor had made up her mind. She wrote that letter because she was planning to take Dominic to come visit me at my small apartment for a weekend. She wanted us to spend time together as a family. In the letter, she wrote, "I am leaving tonight. I am taking Dominic. We are coming to see you. We will be together forever." She put the letter in her car to drop it off at my place. She was not running away from you, Salvatore. She adored you. The fire was just a horrible, cruel accident. Salvatore fell backward into his chair and covered his face with his hands. A loud, primal sob escaped from his chest. For 20 long years, he had hated his dead wife. He thought she had betrayed him. Because of that hatred, he had turned himself into a cold, ruthless monster. And it was all a terrible mistake. Eleanor had loved him until her very last breath. Salvatore cried like a child. He wept for the loss of his family. But most of all, He wept for the 20 years he had wasted living in pure hatred. After a long time, he lifted his head and looked at Connie. "If this is true," Salvatore stammered, "why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me believe that awful lie for 20 years? Connie gave a sad, faint smile. "After the fire, I went to the police station to explain. But when I arrived, I saw you sitting on a bench. Your eyes were completely dead. You were screaming in anger, saying that you hated Eleanor and that she was a traitor." Connie looked down at her hands. "I realized something in that moment, Salvatore. If I told you the truth, your anger would turn into self-blame. You would think that if she hadn't tried to visit her long-lost mother, she would still be alive. You would have carried a mountain of guilt that would have killed you. So, I decided to let you hate her. Anger is a powerful shield, Salvatore. It kept you alive. I took the blame in silence." Salvatore stared at her in utter shock. This woman had allowed her daughter's memory to be tarnished in his mind just to protect him from self-blame. "But why did you come to work here as my maid?" Salvatore asked. "Because I was getting old and my health was failing," Connie said softly. "You were the only connection I had left to Eleanor and Dominic. I wanted to be near you. I wanted to make your hard life just a little bit easier, even if you were harsh to me. It was my way of taking care of the man my daughter loved so deeply." Salvatore felt a crushing wave of guilt. He had treated this woman like a servant, shouted at her, and just fired her over a broken vase. And all this time, she was his protector. She was the grandmother of his son. Salvatore stood up, walked over to Connie, and dropped to his knees right in front of her. He took her worn, wrinkled hands into his own. "I am so sorry," Salvatore sobbed bitterly. "Please forgive a foolish, blind old man. I have been so cruel to you. I have been so cruel to everyone." Connie placed her hand gently on top of Salvatore's silver hair and stroked it softly. "I forgave you a very long time ago, Salvatore," she whispered gently. "There is nothing to forgive. We have both suffered far too much." For the first time in 20 years, the ice around Salvatore's heart began to melt. He stood up, closed the silver locket carefully, and placed it back into Connie's palm. "You are never going back to your tiny apartment, Connie," he said with a deep, beautiful warmth. "And you are never, ever wearing a maid uniform again." From that unforgettable day forward, everything changed. Salvatore moved Connie into the largest, most beautiful guest suite on the second floor. He hired the best doctors to take care of her health and bought her beautiful clothes. The harsh billionaire completely transformed. He stopped shouting and started treating his workers with deep respect and kindness. The cold mansion finally began to feel like a warm, loving home. Every single evening, Salvatore and Connie sat together in the library, sharing beautiful memories of Eleanor and little Dominic. They healed each other's broken hearts. They were no longer a master and a maid. They were a family. Thank you so much for watching this emotional story until the very end. It reminds us that we never truly know the heavy burdens that the people around us are carrying. Always choose kindness, because a simple smile or a gentle word can change a life. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a big thumbs up and share it with your friends and family. Click that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming stories. Thank you for your time. Take great care of yourself, and we will see you in the next video.